Do you know the difference between strategy statics and strategy dynamics? Or the three critical criteria that go into power? Well, you will if you keep listening, because today I'm covering 7 Powers, the Foundation of Business Strategy by Helmer. And I'll have to tell you, there's a lot to learn here. And I'm going to quickly, the book was fairly short, so I'm going to quickly go through the key concepts, and then I'm going to apply it to independent mortgage banks. So stay tuned, it's good. Let me show you what the book looks like right here. You can see here's the cover of the book, 7 Powers, Foundation of Business Strategy. There's 7 powers. They're very easy to understand, and so we'll get through them quickly. I will tell you, I'm going to save you because a third of the book, Hamilton's an economist, and a third of the book is economic formulas. And I listened to it on Audible, and it sounded like X to the Y, or the I plus the M to the sub O, parentheses to the X. And he'd go through this formula that was like literally like 2 minutes long on the Audible. I'm like, what the heck is he talking about? Now, the Audible book came with the 88-page PDF addendum, so you can look at all those formulas. If you're excited about those formulas, I'm sure you can find them online, but I'm not going to talk about those. I'm going to talk about the 7 strategies. We're going to get right to it. And so here's the thing. When we talk about the strategies, this book, when you talk about the powers, it's the durable competitive advantages. What he calls powers. Powers are durable competitive advantages that allow companies to generate superior long-term profits. That's it. That's what 7 things can a company identify and build to have a durable competitive advantage, or these powers to generate long-term profits. So I'm gonna go through the 7, and then I want if you're an IMB, I don't care if you're a loan officer, I don't care if you're a processor, a receptionist, an owner, mentally create a scorecard for your company and go, how do I rate against those 7 powers, right? Now, so there's 2 types of strategy, is statics, and it's dynamics. And statics are these different powers, the 7 different powers, and dynamics is actually how do you develop those powers. So that's the definition, right? And so, but for a power has to meet 3 criteria. It must be a benefit to the business, which means it improves its economic value. It has to be durable over time, meaning it risks erosion. And then it must not be easily replicable, so that it creates barriers to competition. So that's 7 powers. So you'll get into it. What's the first power? Scale economies. Scale economies, of course, we all know about that in the mortgage business, because right now large companies are scaling all over the place. They're using AI and technology to scale. They're able to leverage those costs over a lot of loans, marketing, all those type of things. So scale economies. So simple. Large firms can spread fixed costs over more units, make them more cost effective. It's a classic economic advantage, as we know. But Helmer makes it practical by showing how companies like Intel use scale to dominate niche markets. That was the first chapter, scale economies. The second chapter, scale economies is easy for understand. Second chapter is network economies. And that is the value increases as more users join. Think of like a job posting board, or LinkedIn, right? LinkedIn is more valuable. The more people that join LinkedIn, the more, that's actually one of the examples I use in the book, the more powerful LinkedIn is. And as you get more powerful because of your network economies, you can charge more and you can start to have more margin, right? And so do you have such, now in the mortgage company, we don't necessarily have networks. Networks is when, the entire membership is benefited by more people joining. We don't really have that in the mortgage industry, so network economies doesn't really apply to us. The third is counter positioning. And that counter positioning is an incumbent refuses to copy an entrant's superior model because doing so would hurt its existing business. The disruptor wins because the incumbent is stuck, right? And so a really common one that might be Kodak with print photography versus digital photography, or Netflix and Blockbuster, right? Blockbuster with tapes, and Netflix with going virtual online. There's all sorts. Right now, Google was facing this with Google, their Chrome versus AI search, which they now have with Gemini, right? But this is super applicable to the mortgage business, right? Because how many old school IMBs refuse to evolve, or by the way can't afford to, don't have the resources to evolve, right? and thus are being disrupted. In our space, that could be disrupted by the broker model, disrupted by consumer direct, disrupted by the global, platforms or the super apps. We're being disrupted all around. Are we changing, right? Number 4 is superpower. Number 4 is switching costs. And here's what switching costs means: is the power. Remember, I want to remind you what power means. Power means durable competitive advantages that allow companies to generate superior long-term profits. Right? So far, if you have scale economies, that's durable, it gives you an advantage. Network economies, the counter positioning when you refuse to change. But the next one is switching costs. And that is when it becomes overly painful for your consumer, your customer. It's overly painful or financially, emotionally, or logistically. It's a hardship for a company to switch providers. A really good example of that is when Apple came out with iPods, right? You could download all your music on iPod, but the way it was encrypted a certain way that you couldn't take that music with you if you wanted to go to, say, Sony, right? And so the barrier to leave, the switching cost was so high, you wouldn't leave. A lot of times we have that here. We face that with our vendors in the mortgage space. The switching cost from an LOS system is exceptionally high. From a CRM system is exceptionally high. We're virtually stuck and we're held hostages, and then they take advantage of us. I always use a bad word. But anyway, switching cost is number 4. Number 5 is branding. Branding is more than marketing. Branding refers to deep trust and emotional loyalty that allows the business to charge premium prices. Think of Coca-Cola or Nike. Really think of Tiffany's. That's the example I use in the book. Tiffany's, right? In the book, they use an example that the average engagement ring is from Tiffany's is twice from a typical retail outlet. Yet people happily pay because it's Tiffany's, and so that would be branding. The next, the 6th power is cornered resources, and cornered resources is, hey, do you have proprietary technology or intellectual property or people that no one else can easily acquire? An example of this is, if you're Rate and you have Champignosian, the number 1 loan officer for the last 4 years, that gives you really, you got the upper hand. That's great. Now Chance, of course, been promoted as president, which is going to do a great job. But you know what I mean? If you have a bunch of top producers, if you have the best CTO, if you have the best marketing team, those are things that people can't easily acquire. They give you power. They give you, that make you a more durable company. The 7th one is process power. And that is unique processes. And this doesn't mean just tech, because tech is temporary. And the book goes in, tech is temporary. But processes that are deeply embedded into operations that can't be replicated externally. And so for us, would it be, gosh, do you have AI, technology or other technology you're deploying? Is more, do you have a technology department that can keep innovating technology on the front edge? The innovation is what can't be replicated. The technology can. And so those are the seven powers. Now, that's part 1 of the book. There's 2 parts of the book. I wasn't so into the second part. Now, the first part of the book is about 3/4 long, and the last part's only 1/4 long. It's really a short part. I think the Audible is 5 hours, and the last part was less than an hour. And that is the strategy dynamics, which is how do you build power once you have it. Right? So how do you acquire it to a greater degree? There's 2 chapters on this: the path of power, which explores how do you get power, and then the second one is the power progression, which is how do you evolve. Once you have power in any one of these areas, how do you evolve? And you do it by invention, by developing a unique offering, strategy, choose a path to power, and sustain, cement, and advantage growth. So that's the key thing. But couple of key looks, and then we're going to look at IMBs scorecard for a second. So strategy isn't activity, it's power. If it doesn't lead to durable economic advantage, it's noise. You only need one strong power point to win. You don't need all 7. So pick one. What can you excel at? What can you be the best at? Powers are built, not born. So you can build your powers, one of these 7 powers. And by the way, most companies don't have powers, which is why they're only temporarily successful. So there you go. That's the book. Now let's look at this towards a mortgage banking standpoint. If you're in mortgage banking, do you have these 7 powers? Do you have any of these powers? Do you have a path to one of these powers? See, where does your company actually hold power today, and where is it most vulnerable, right? So if you use Helmer's framework, you can kind of create a scorecard for your company. Do you have scale? Yes or no? How's your scale compared to your competitors, right? Does that scale give you leverage? If the answer might be no. For most IMBs, small and medium, the answer is no. Do you have a network effect? Does your platform? Do you benefit from a platform dynamics where people are dependent, on each person in the network? And the answer is probably no. You could maybe argue servicing, but servicing, if a company is serviced by a loan, I am not made stronger because they get another client. So I don't think network effect, applies to us. The counter positioning power, are you willing to adopt radically different models to lead, not to follow? Now here, that is where, possibly IMB, small and medium, could compete. That's where they could create a power by counter positioning. But is that your mindset? A lot of people, a lot of the C-suite, a lot of owners of IMBs, they're not innovative that way. They're not trying to totally change how mortgages are done. They're really just trying to ride the horse until it dies, right? But if they were to say, hey, I'm going to do this totally differently, I'm going to engineer this completely from the customer standpoint of view, or whatever it is, whatever the innovation is, well, then they could have counter positioning power, right? Look, say switching costs. What would make your stay without being asked? Like, what would make the cost of leaving you so high, right, that they would never leave you? Do you have an answer for that? Is that a power, right? It can be, by the way, right? It can be. You could create a customer retention program that was so powerful, so valuable, the customers wouldn't want to leave you, right? If you retain servicing and you're great at their servicing and you're always, relative to them, that could be a power. But do you have switching cost power, right? And branding, does your name open doors? And honestly, with this a couple expansions, company name doesn't mean anything in the mortgage market, right? It does with banks, and credit unions have some cachet there, and top IMBs do. But ho-hum mortgage, that doesn't have cachet with customers, right? So, does your brand, intuitively command trust? Can you, because of the strength of your brand, gain margin? Can you charge more because of your brand? That's a really great way to say, if you have great branding, you could charge more. If you can't charge more, you're not really well branded, period. Unless your brand is low cost, by the way. So let's not misunderstand that. And do you have any cornered resources? Meaning, do you have any resources that nobody else has, right? Pretty simple. And then if you look at process power, do you consistently do anything faster, better, or smarter than your competitors? And is it scalable? So create a scorecard. Here it is. Do I have scale? Do I have the network effect? Do I have counter positioning, meaning you're willing to be radically different? Are the switching costs so high that your customers won't leave you? Is your branding so strong that you can charge more? Do you have resources that nobody else has? Or do you have a processes that just blows the doors off everybody else? Which power do you have? Because without at least one of these powers, then you have a limited future. And so if you're in, I don't care what role you're in. If you're an IMB, if you work for a company, you're all responsible for the future of the company. Ask these questions. Which 7 power do we have that's going to lead us to the future? Which one? We need at least one, right? Which one is it? Maybe it's 2, maybe it's 3. What a wonderful conversation. As we're not in business planning. If you get to business planning, business visioning at the end of the year, the question isn't how many deals are we going to do. The question is how are we going to build our power so that we're around in 10 or 15 years. That's a really good question. So, this book, honestly, it was very dry. It had a lot of economic talk into it, a lot of formulas, but you could glean value out of the basis of the 7 powers, I think. You could create a scorecard for within your own business, even if you're a loan officer or a real estate agent. How to take these powers, these 7 things, how do they apply to you versus your peers, versus your competing loan officers or your competing real estate agents? It fits you too, it can fit anyway. And that way, the book was insightful. I thought it was all right. I hope you got something out of this. I appreciate you giving me your time. I really enjoy doing these book reviews every Sunday. With that, hope you're having a great day, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks so much.